Hey everyone, Samia Khan here with your FOX10 News Now update. Happy Tuesday morning. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. We have a lot of news ahead, a jam-packed show this morning. We are going to have some very special guests. Yes, I'm talking about Jeff Moriarty, the one and only tech extraordinaire, is making his News Now return. He was gone all of last week, taking a little break from work, so he'll be making his return 1 p.m. local time right here in Arizona, so that would be 4 p.m. D.C. time. We'll be carrying that arrival live here on News Now. And as you may or may not know, the Pope is here throughout the week, and a couple of Valley Nuns are going to travel to D.C. to see the Pope speak live. They are in this newsroom, in this studio. They're supposed to be joining me up here soon, momentarily. I'm sure someone is finding them now and inviting them to the News Now set. So if you have questions for them, Sister Joan, Sister Joanie, they'll be joining us. Maybe you saw them on the morning show on with Rick and Andrea. Well, they'll be joining me as well. Plus, of course, it's not an episode of News Now without an appearance by Ron Hoon. So guys, don't worry, Ron Hoon will be joining me a little bit later on. We'll be talking politics. For example, Ron and I yesterday were just talking about how Scott Walker should drop out, and then what happens? Scott Walker drops out of the race. Plus, Ron and I have to talk about Carly. I'll be carrying this video for you guys.
They are preparing for the Pope's arrival here at the Basilica in Washington, bracing for perhaps 25,000 people. And for the Pope, this is just the start. Pope Francis wrapping up his trip to Cuba as he prepares to head north to Washington, New York, and Philadelphia. Around D.C., barricades already line some streets as the faithful prepare.
I'm very excited that he's coming. I think it's be a good shot in the arm for lots of Catholics in the region.
That is clearly what the Pope is hoping for. His message in Cuba tried to keep politics at arm's length.
Service is never ideological. We do not serve ideas, we serve people.
But the Pope did take time to meet with Cuba's Fidel Castro while pointedly not meeting with any Cuban dissidents. And when he addresses Congress this week and meets with President Obama at the White House, it's going to be difficult to avoid political messages.
But their focus in the context of this meeting will not be about politics, not about specific policies, but rather about the kinds of values that both men have dedicated their lives to championing.
And then there is the matter of security. For local and federal agencies, one of the largest undertakings of its kind. Many of the events will require tickets, but some visitors may just take it on faith that they can catch a glimpse.
We anticipate there are so many people who will do anything they can to see the Holy Father. So outside the perimeter, we have no idea who will show. If they can get through the metro or walk here, best of luck to them.
The Pope is actually going to arrive later this afternoon at Andrews Air Force Base just outside of Washington. President Obama and the First Lady will be there to greet the Pope as he steps off of his plane. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
All right, thank you, Doug Luzader, for that report. I'm sitting with Sister Joanie and Sister Joan. I just had to do a quick switcheroo because I made our lower thirds beforehand and had you labeled as Joan and you as Joanie, and your names are already similar. And I was like, I don't want to confuse the viewers. So I'm glad we were able to make that switch. I'm very excited to have you guys here because you guys are making, I want to call it a historic trip. I mean, this is a really big deal to go see Pope Francis. And I know
Oh, yes. The whole idea of being able to, what we're going to be able to see is when he speaks before Congress. And so, Can
you explain just what that felt like 28 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that was really the first time I ever experienced the Pope being in the United States and giving the American people that opportunity. So we were really able to share, that joy together.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to share the Southwest,
Right.
for him to come out all the way out here. I think before, when popes have come to the United States, they've stayed on either coast, etc. So that was really special for us.
What month of the year was that?
September.
Oh, so it's still fairly
same time.
warm.
It was very warm.
Wow.
Yes,
I was expecting maybe November,
No.
December. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. By the way, a handful of people in the chat room, Lori saying, God bless you, sisters. I have a question. At what age did you decide you wanted to pursue this path, become a nun?
When I was a senior in high school. That was when I was thinking about where I wanted to go to college, and the sisters I had in grade school were always so very happy, and I thought that sounded good to me.
I think I made that decision too, but then I went to college for a year. I wanted to really test it out first.
Well, what is the process like? I mean, I'm sure what is the thought process like when making that decision?
I think it's listening to the Spirit that's calling. When I was in high school, instead of giving up something for Lent, it was suggested we do something for Lent. So I wanted to go to daily Mass during Lent, and so it ended up being my parents going as well, because I'm originally from Butte, Montana, and it's very cold and dark in Lent time. But it was a great way to start off the day, and I think that was God's simple little call saying, this is where you want to be.
And I had the sisters for 12 years of education, and they were always wonderful role models for me. And I thought it was always something that I wanted to imitate.
Wow. Have there been girls that have come to you and sort of followed in your footsteps, asked for similar advice?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All throughout the years. I think that's one of the major ways of individuals making that decision, is people in their lives have been special to them.
Right, right. So the Pope is arriving, I want to say, at his house.
I don't know about that, but we're going to have a tour. We're going to have a tour of the Capitol.
Right.
Oh, okay.
On the next day.
Very cool.
Interesting enough, our tour guide is going to be a Brophy graduate, so
wow.
has his Phoenix ties.
Deborah saying, sisters, what do you see as the main difference between Pope Francis and Pope Paul? That's a good question, Deborah.
Between Francis and Paul II? I think Pope Francis comes out of a different mindset. He's not a philosopher theologian. And so what he is able to do, and he works so much of his life with the extremely poor. And I think that's still who's first in his heart. And he wasn't in Rome for very long. Most of his time has been being in Latin America. And so he comes out of that cultural background. So I think those are the differences. I think John Paul II was marvelous on meeting people and wanting to get around the world as Pope. And I think the two of them go hand in hand that way.
Joan, do you agree?
I agree. It was well said.
For viewers at home that may not be as familiar with the Catholic faith, can you guys elaborate on the importance that the Pope plays in?
Certainly, he's been our spiritual leader, and I think we look to them all the time for guidance. And this Pope especially, in this year of mercy, he expects high expectations, and he knows that there are ideals that we should strive for. And I think it has to be a return to really some basic family values, where the family really spends quality time together and encourages each other, and places an emphasis on real true education.
Right. Tamara, is it true that the Pope is chosen by God through the College of Cardinals?
Yes. Yes. That's a basic Catholic belief on there. Yeah. And, when they get together as the College of Cardinals and they go in to basically the Sistine Chapel, they are listening to what the Spirit is saying to them. And I think it's almost always a surprise who it comes out being the next Pope.
Right. Yeah, can you guys elaborate a little more on what the process is in terms of picking the next Pope?
Well, shortly after the death of a pope, they call what they call a consistory, and the cardinals from all over the world come, and they really do prayerful sessions in trying to decide who would be elected pope. And I think prayer is a very significant part of that. While there are probably a lot of discussion about individual qualities, when it comes right down to it, they have to listen to what the Spirit is saying to them.
Great. Let me see if there are any more questions from the chat room. I don't have any questions from the chat room right now, but is there anything else you want to add? I mean, I'm sure this is a very exciting opportunity.
Well, and it's a very historic opportunity.
Right.
He's going to be there, and then he is also, while he's in Washington, D.C., is going to be canonizing, and it's the first time that's ever happened on American soil, canonizing Junipero Serra,
Right.
who set up all the missions in California.
Right. We learned a lot. I grew up in California, so
Right.
4th grade was dedicated to learning about the missions. And, we had to build missions. We went on field trips to missions. It was a really big part of my childhood. So that's I guess, majorly significant.
And I would just pray for his safety and the safety of everybody who's there. It's very historical, and it can really be a blessing to everybody.
How many people are expected to come to D.C. for this? Do you know?
Well, they say there could probably be 100,000 in the area right around the Capitol, so...
Wow. How large of how much commotion was there when the Pope was here in Arizona in '87?
Well, it was wonderful because they had the Native American event at the Coliseum, and then they had the big Mass at ASU.
And then they had a mass for all the religious, not a mass, but a prayer service for all the religious at St. Simon and Jude Cathedral. And then he also did the prayer service at the Basilica at St. Mary's. So it went all the way around, and people lined the streets wherever the motorcade went.
Right. How often does the Pope travel?
Well, it depends on his health and his stamina.
Right.
And when you see how they are just available to the people all the time, you wonder how they can continue doing it. But I think beginning with John Paul II, no one traveled more, and I don't think anybody will ever travel as much as he did.
Well,
But,
and the first pope to come to the United States was Paul VI, and he took the name Paul in order to be that missionary that went out to places, and so he made it as a part of his papacy to get out of the Vatican and out to see other people. And then John Paul II continued on with that, and so did Pope Benedict, and now Pope Francis is doing the same thing.
Let's see. What can we do to encourage more young people to pursue religious callings? That's a good question.
I think the family has an extreme important influence. If it's important to the parents, I think it becomes an important issue with the children too.
How do they determine the age of the Pope? Robert wants to know.
He's just, whoever gets elected is elected. Pope Francis was elected in his 70s, but John Paul II was his late 50s when he was elected Pope, or early 60s. That's why he was there for 25 years. So,
how long does the Pope typically serve? I guess there is no exact amount of time.
Right. The first one who ever resigned, and they had to make a decision that this could be happening, is Pope Benedict. And he has really done a beautiful job of just taking a back seat and being available for any time that Pope Francis would like to visit and talk. And what his emphasis really is each day, I think, is definitely prayer.
Sisters, Pope Francis seems to be very attentive to Mary. Is the rosary back in relevance? Deborah wants to know.
Absolutely. I think it's a special prayer of all of the Catholics, and it has been a tradition for over the years. And I think his emphasis on Mary is just wonderful, and I think it'll have a great impact on young people.
Hala saying, I remember waiting for the announcement a few years ago of who would be the next Pope. It was really quite the process. Apple Snapple saying, what are your views on children taking communion? Does he mean communion?
Communion.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think it was a typo.
Well, I think it's a great grace, and it certainly makes them aware of the place of God in their lives. And the more attentive they are to the Eucharist, I think the happy people will be.
Let's see. No, I mean what age they're chosen. They seem to take the oldest pope that is available every time, Robert says. Is there a significance in that, in terms of... Tamara wants to know.
I think you'd have to ask the individuals there.
Right. It's kind of hard to say generally. I mean, it's an important part, though, of the faith.
That's right.
Yes.
I think we've answered everyone's questions. So
thank you.
Thank you guys for chatting with us. I know you have a big couple days ahead. It's so, I mean, I don't even know. Are you going to be able to take photos there? Are they
We hope
really
so.
restricted in terms of like cell phone? Because, you know, obviously when there's any sort of important figure, there's a lot of security involved. Do you know if they're planning on like taking cell phones at the door or anything like that?
No, it seems to be that we'll be able to bring our phones in. And I imagine simple cameras, like you can't go in with, I imagine any of these big cameras in here. You'll have to have a badge
You'll
for
have to
those.
get
Well,
your own
I'm
feed for
sure
that.
that there's going to be cameras in there anyways, professionals that
Right,
are being
yes.
broadcasting on all the
Right.
networks.
But from what we've been told, individuals can bring in simple cameras.
Right.
Oh, that's so great. Wow. Well, you get to meet another pope. Get to
Right.
see
That's
another
right.
pope.
Right.
That's a really big deal. Or were your students really excited? What were they telling you at school?
Well, it just happened within the last 4 days that we got this
Right.
invitation, so they're just catching on to the fact that we are going.
Like, can you guys sneak me in your suitcase? Sort of thing.
Pretty much that's it.
That's so fun. Well, I have a question. If you had the opportunity to ask the Pope anything, what would you ask him?
What his greatest desire would be for the world as a whole. What would be his most heartfelt desire?
And what can we do as individuals to really bring peace? I think it all starts with one person, and how do we make that important throughout the world?
Right. I think it still goes back to that idea of just simplifying religion and faith, and if we all just stepped away from the complications of it and all the little minute details that everyone gets caught up in, I feel like that would help us in the path towards everyone getting along.
But Sister Joanie also has the Pope on her agenda for July. She's going to going to World Youth Day with the students from Xavier.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So
So that'll be in Poland. Yes.
Oh, wow.
So it'll be a very interesting difference to see.
Yeah.
With heads of state, or with the Pope here speaking to, people who are running governments, and then in Poland speaking to the youth.
What do you think he's going to tell our government? I'm very intrigued by this.
Nobody knows. That's
Really? No one has any idea?
Nobody has any idea.
That's, I think, what everyone's waiting to hear.
And he is a Latin American, so he's going to come with
Right.
that cultural bias, and not everybody in Latin America loves the big brother to the north of the United,
Right.
commonly called the United States. So
So do you think, will they talk about the immigration issue? I'm sure that'll be a topic of concern, since that's a big talker
Right.
here.
But I think anything he does will be done with real gentleness and with